In this example, we're going to look at how using Flexbox we can have our layout break and go to multiple rows based on the size of the browser window. So this is ultimately what we're going to be creating. Here's what the file looks like that we're starting with. The HTML is pretty simple. I have a div with a class of wrapper, and then I have 6 articles. They each have a class of column assigned to them, and they each contain an H3. The CSS that we're using has some rules on the wrapper. We have a font rule, a max width, some margin, and a border. Then I have a rule to remove the margin on the H3, and then I have a rule on my .column class. So this is on the article element, and we're specifying a fixed width and a fixed height, along with a background color and some text color and some line height and text-align centering and whatnot. When we look at our file, you can see that I end up with one row of the 6 articles. So this is the default behavior. If I want these elements to sit side by side, well, you should already know how to do that. I'm going to go into the wrapper. I'm going to specify that I want the display to be flex. Remember, as soon as I do that, then these items are going to sit side by side. Now, currently, they're filling the wrapper container starting at the left-hand side, and I get my remaining space over here on the right. So if I want to have some equal spacing between the items, then we'll use that justify content property, and we'll go ahead and we'll set this to have space around. When I do that, now I get nice spacing in between each of the items, and you can see how I have equal amount of spacing on the right and the left, as well as equal gutters in between each of the column elements. Now, based on the size of my browser window, that spacing might grow and or shrink if it has room to still exist. At a certain point, you can see that my articles are actually getting more narrow than they really should be. And let me just go ahead and turn on a border. We'll add our box sizing and do border box, and then I'll turn on a border that is solid 1 pixel, and let's just make this orange so that we can see it. So now if we refresh, you can clearly see that this is the default width, 150 pixels. At some point, as my page gets smaller, these article elements are no longer respecting the 150 pixels that we specified for the width, and that's because they can't fit in this area. So what I need to do is, using Flexbox, I need to specify how I want these items to wrap, or what I want them to do when the page is too narrow for them to take up their default width value. So we're going to go back into the wrapper element, and I'm going to add a flex wrap property. The flex wrap property has a default behavior of no wrap. So if I set it to no wrap, you're going to see no difference in how the elements currently exist. This is the default behavior. If we change this to wrap and we save, you're now going to see that my elements are going to wrap down. So if there's not enough room for them to fit, they're still going to respect and take up their 150 pixels. And then if they can't fit another element, they'll drop down to the next row. And you can see that they'll just keep doing that depending on the size of my browser window. So here they can all fit with 6 columns, and then as it gets more narrow, one of them is going to drop down, and then 2, and then 3, and then so on and so forth. The other option that you have for flex wrap is going to be wrap reverse. And if we use a wrap reverse feature, you can see what happens. It actually reverses the order of the elements. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it now goes ahead and it reverses the order. You might want to switch this around in certain cases. For our purposes here, we're just going to use the wrap setting, and then this is going to allow our layout to behave in the way that we want.